You're listening to TBR Radio Presents, the Dixie Heritage Hour, with your host, the Director of Dixie Heritage, Dr. Ed DeVries.
It's always good to be behind the golden Dixie Heritage microphone here on TBR Radio Presents, the Dixie Heritage Hour. And we have a show for you this week. We have three of the biggest names in country music, in Southern rock, just in music in general, that you're going to hear from today in today's broadcast. We're going to start with Danny Shirley. Of course, Danny is the lead singer from Confederate Railroad. And Confederate Railroad has just taken a lot of crap over the last couple of months because they have the name Confederate in their name, Confederate Railroad. Those of you who listen to our Dixie Heritage newsletter, those of you who read our Dixie Heritage newsletter, I guess you can't really listen to it unless you have a text-to-speech app on your computer that maybe you use. But unless you are a reader of our Dixie Heritage newsletter, you may not realize that we covered the story extensively there back in July and August. That Confederate Railroad was scheduled to play there at the Illinois State Fair, and the governor and the Secretary of Agriculture and others in the state dumped them at the last minute. And it ended up costing them tens of thousands of dollars because, when you book a group like that, you pay a deposit, and those deposits are non-refundable. And so, it was just a horrible waste of taxpayer money to cancel them. But anyways, all's well that ends well, I guess, and Confederate Railroad wound up doing an alternate gig just a few miles away, ended up raising a lot of money and giving it to a really good cause, and we'll talk about that later. But, Danny Shirley is going to talk here about Confederate Railroad, how the band got started, how they even came to the decision to name the band Confederate Railroad, what it was like to have that gig canceled there at the Illinois State Fair. And basically why he is not politically correct and why their music's not politically correct. And so you'll want to stay tuned for that. We're also going to have some commentary from Leonard Skinner, another one of those great Southern rock bands, talking about the Confederate flag and why they still fly it. And Charlie Daniels is even going to chime in for a couple of minutes. And so ended up having some clips there of Skinner and also a clip of Charlie Daniels there of a phone call with him, just a brief conversation there. Stuff that I've been sitting on for a long time, thinking, sooner or later I'll be able to insert this in a show somewhere. And so this gives us the opportunity to do so. And so you'll want to stay tuned, and we're going to just kick it right off, and we're going to go into that first conversation with Danny Shirley, and then, of course, you'll just want to stay tuned for the whole hour. So I think that probably one of the coolest band names that there ever has been is Confederate Railroad. Of being the Dixie Heritage Show, we're all Southerners here. We have an affinity for anything that's Confederate. But the name Confederate Railroad, did you come up with that? Did somebody else come up with that? How did you wind up with that great name?
I did not. Actually, I signed the deal with Atlantic Records as a solo act and cut the first album as a solo act.
So then you were called something other than Confederate Railroad in the beginning?
When we were ready to release, there were so many new male vocalists coming out. And me and the band had been together for so long at that time anyway, that me and Rick Blackburn at Atlantic talked about it, and we decided, let's put this out as a band. And that's where that decision was made. And then a songwriter friend of mine came up with the name Confederate Railroad, and we went with that.
Just say it was a great decision because, as I said earlier, that's probably the coolest band name that's ever been come up with.
It's stuck. It's worked well for us. There's been some negatives, of course. Some people see it and totally different than what it's meant to be, and you can't change that. Just like you're not going to change me as far as being proud to be from the South. And to me, that's all that is. There was all this kind of Southern stuff and Dixie this and Dixie that, but nobody had used the word Confederate. And we were a little bit rebellious, those years with Coe and years with Johnny Paycheck, how you're not going to be.
So then you're saying that rebellion is a genetically inherited Southern trait?
We did have our own way of doing things. We were a little hard-headed and stubborn sometimes. But Rick Blackburn told me after we'd been together about a year, he said, the day I signed you, he said, literally every label head in town called me and told me what an idiot I was. He said, this guy was working with David Allen Coe and Johnny Paycheck. What are you trying to do? And he said, you're like the easiest guy I ever worked with in my life. And he's the one that had Coe and Paycheck at their heyday. So it was funny.
People hear the name Confederate Railroad. What do you want to come to their mind? What do you want to be the image, or what do you want the band to represent?
Again, it gets back to that. We've already gotten more than we deserved. We've already been blessed more than we should have been. And I guess just that, you can do this, and you can have some effect on people's lives. You don't have to become a jerk when you do it, and you can have a lot of fun. You can have a great life doing this.
So you've been at this a number of years. Are you still enjoying it, or is it just a job, or is it a mission? What is it?
And that's the biggest thing. I still enjoy it. I still have fun. I still thank God every day that I'm allowed to do this.
So if you were to change the name, and I know that you've said that you won't, and I believe you when you say that, and one of the things we respect about you is the fact that you have stood behind that Confederate Railroad name, regardless of all the crap that you've taken, especially here recently. But if you were to have given the band another name, given everything that's happened over the years and all the experiences that you've had, if you were to give the band another name besides Confederate Railroad, what would it be?
Lucky to be alive, I guess. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, let's go with that title since that's a new album, yeah.
I know you had said a few minutes ago that you were a Southern boy, but let's narrow that down a little bit. I understand you're from Tennessee.
Yeah, I was born and raised here in the Chattanooga area, went to Hickson High School.
So do you still live there in Chattanooga?
We still live out around Cleveland, Uruguay area.
So then did you get your start there in Chattanooga, or had you already moved on to somewhere else before you really started?
My first paying gig was at the Ranch House Restaurant and Lounge at the foot of Lookout Mountain in July of '76.
I was just 4 years old then.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So as I was reading up on the band's history, I read that you played a lot in the Marietta, Georgia area, though, back there in the early days.
Well, we toured a lot all over the country. I started the band in '81 and playing here around Chattanooga, and then in '83 we started kind of the old theory of make the circle bigger.
Mm-hmm.
We get into Alabama, Georgia, and North Carolina, and spread out a little bit. One of the places that was really good for us was down in Atlanta, Marietta area, a big club called Miss Kitty's.
Mm-hmm.
Now the rotation of house bands there before any of us had record deals was us, Travis Tritt, Diamond Rio, Little Texas, and John Berry.
So then when you were playing the restaurant scene in Chattanooga, that was before you had formed the band?
So, and this before any of us were known nationally.
Wow.
And it was a really happening club. And that's where we were when we got signed.
Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about getting signed for that record deal. Tell us the story.
Actually, on my 35th birthday.
Well, then you were already a middle-aged man before you had your big break, before you got discovered?
Which would be unheard of nowadays. If you don't have a record deal now, by the time you're 30, I guess, you're not going to happen. But, it was my 31st or 35th birthday.
You say that, but you think that part of it may just be that you're appealing to a Southern audience, and Southerners just aren't as discriminatory as, say, Yankees are? I don't know. In some parts of the country, perhaps in some genres of music, they'd say, he's an old man or whatever. But Southerners don't necessarily think that way. Southerners, age is just a number to us, be it young or old. And so is it possible that maybe one of the reasons you were able to break in late in life, I say late, I mean, you were 35, but, the reason you were still able to break in and you didn't have to be a teeny bopper is because of having a primarily Southern audience and fan base?
That's true. We still play a lot of college crowds. I show a big club with her every year, and probably 80-85% of the club was 25 and under, and they were singing, every song that I did.
So that's got to make you feel good knowing that not only did you appeal to your own generation, even if you did it, a little later in life, but also that you're still all these years later appealing to the next and upcoming generation as well.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's great. The ones that I hate is when you do a show with one of these new young artists and they say, man, I was a big Confederate Railroad fan when I was a little kid, and I used to sneak behind the club because I wasn't old enough to get in, and
Well, your first album, back from that early day, it's probably still your most popular stuff. I mean, the stuff you're still singing, even today. I think that, I've got that first album, and I think you probably released just about the entire thing as singles. And so people heard it on the radio, and like I said, you're still singing today. I mean, just really popular stuff still resonates with people all these years later.
We had 6 chart records off that one album, yeah. It was a fun album. Robert Orman, the big music critic in Nashville, listed that as the album to have of that year. So I thought that was pretty cool.
So we want to play a little bit of your music here for our audience, just on the off chance that somebody's listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour of all shows that has not heard Confederate Railroad. I'm going to play a song called the Queen of Memphis. So tell me, what's the story behind the Queen of Memphis? Every song has a story behind it. What's the story behind this one?
Dave Gibson of the Gibson Miller Band was one of the co-writers on this song, along with Bernie Nelson. A lot of big hits for us. I'm sorry, no, Bernie wasn't on this one. He was on Cadillac Kind. Dave Gibson, Kathy Leuven wrote this song, Queen of Memphis. And when they wrote it, we really liked the chorus and the melody, but I wasn't crazy about the verses. Okay. And so they went back in and did a rewrite on it, but I was so sure, I had such confidence in Kathy and Dave that we went ahead and recorded the song without them even having written the verses yet. But this was a number one record for us. The video for this, remember we had Jerry Glanville, coach of the Falcons.
Let's go ahead then and play the extended version of the video, the one with the coach there before the band kicks in and starts to sing. And so this is the Queen of Memphis video by Confederate Railroad.
You'll love these guys. A little rough on the edges, just like us.
What was their name again?
Confederate Railroad, and they're great and close personal friends of mine. We're here to see my sidekicks at Confederate Railroad, and we've got backstage passes.
You got backstage passes, man, but you got the wrong backstage passes. Hey, Coach, how you doing? Hey, Coach, what's up?
Do you know who I am?
I don't care who you are, you've got the wrong passes, and you're not coming in.
Who is this guy? Is he new around here?
Hitchhiked up to Memphis, a young boy in my prime. I thought that big old city could ease my Georgia mind. After just 1 hour, I met this southern girl. She said to call me the Queen of Memphis. Then she took me around the world. And I saw stars dancing on the water. I heard Elvis singing Blue Suede Shoes. That old muddy river was my witness. The night I fell in love with the Queen of Memphis. Back there on that farm, she set my soul on fire. She fulfilled all my dreams. A boy became a man that night in the arms of the Memphis Queen. And I saw stars dancing on the water. I heard Elvis singing Blue Suede Shoes. Fell in love with the Queen of Memphis. Just like that old man river, she keeps rolling through my mind. And you know I won't forget her, 'cause she was one of a kind.
Hey, Coach, where you been? We left tickets for you. Tickets? Yeah, I gave you tickets for him. These tickets? Those were for Coach.
For those of you who are listening but aren't having the advantage of being able to watch this on YouTube or through an online stream, that punching like sound you just heard was the end of the video there, where the coach punches out the bouncer who wouldn't let him into the show. A great way to end that video. And with that, we're going to break for a commercial for TBR Magazine, our sponsor, and then we'll be back with Danny Shirley of Confederate Railroad. If you love listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour, then I know that you'll love reading the Barnes Review. The Barnes Review is one of my favorite magazines. I began reading the Barnes Review long before they became a sponsor here on the program. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There's just not a more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So if you'll visit www.barnesreview.org, that's www.barnesreview.org, you can find out how you too can become a subscriber to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review by mail, or you can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review electronically in PDF editions. Or you can subscribe to receive both. That's what I do. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review. So the Queen of Memphis, that almost sounds like the name of a riverboat. So was the song about a woman or was the song about a boat?
It's open for interpretation.
So did you actually go to Memphis to do the recording and the video?
We did that in Nashville. I did all those albums in Nashville, all the Confederate Railroad albums. Barry Beckett, our producer, just a legend in music, not just country music, but all kinds of music. And it was just an honor, one of my favorite memories ever to make that record.
So what are you doing right now?
Well, we're still on the road quite a bit. We still do about 100 shows a year. Other than that, I stay home with kids.
So we've got a second clip here, a second video to play for our audience, and it's the song "Jesus and Mama." I understand it was one of your early hits, and so what's the story behind that song?
That was our first #1 record. Actually, I did the demo on that song for the songwriters. And I just kind of filed that in the back of my head. You know, when I get a record deal, I want to try to remember to do this song. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it wanted to become our very first #1 record. And also got us nominated for a couple awards to Christian Music Awards, which was a big honor.
So I didn't even realize that you had gotten a number of Christian Music Awards, as well as, the other country music awards you had received for this particular song and from some other stuff. Tell us a little bit about those Christian Music Association awards that you'd received.
The new vocal group in '93 at the ACMs, nominated for several CMA awards, Grammy Award. That's got some nominations over in Europe, of all things.
You've played overseas. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we played England, Ireland, Germany, Switzerland, France. We were actually the first American country music group to tour Brazil.
So then the band has a pretty big following overseas?
Yeah, it's done pretty good, yeah.
You get a lot of feedback then from your website, emails, cards and letters from people in other countries?
I don't know. I don't know how to use a computer.
Or not, I still know some people who have not yet come into the internet or the online or the email age, and some might even say that you're better off because of it.
But I kind of felt that way, but my wife's kind of pushed me into the 21st century. So she said the other day she set me up an email account. I said, "Oh man, it's another way for people to get in touch with me." not that many people. I'm looking forward to hearing from.
Well, let's go ahead and play that track from the first album, "Jesus and Mama Always Loved Me" by Confederate Railroad.
Made a wish upon a star, I could have a brand new car. Got tired of wishing, so I stole one. 17 and knew it all. My dreams were big, but my thoughts were small. So So many roads, somehow I chose the wrong one. But Jesus and Mama always loved me, even when the devil took control. Jesus and Mama always loved me. This I know, I felt trapped most all my life, found new kinds of lows and highs. Never been a husband, but I've had a lot of wives to hold me. Headstrong, stubborn, couldn't be told, like a wild horse that couldn't be rode. A rainbow chaser, hungry for gold and still searching. But Jesus and Mama always loved me, even when the devil took control. Jesus and Mama always loved me. This I know. I wish Mom could see me now and how I've turned it all around. Lately I've been going down the right road. Life's a picture that you paint with blues and grays, cans and canes. Heaven knows I'm not a saint, but I know Jesus and Mama always loved me, even when the devil took control. Jesus and Mama always loved me. This I know.
How many of those original guys from that first album do you still have in the band?
Well, Mark, the drummer, has been with me. Mark Dufresne, he's been with me since 1981. Wayne Seacrest on bass, lives in Atlanta. He's been with me since '87. Cody's with us. Yeah, he's from Dunlap.
Let's go ahead then and change the subject here just a little bit. You were scheduled back on August 27th to play at the Illinois State Fair, and they canceled you because the name Confederate was in the band and because of that little itty-bitty Confederate flag that's on the grill there of the steam locomotive that's there in your logo. Most people don't even notice that it's there, but obviously somebody did and decided to make issue of it. And so let's talk about that here for just a minute.
Well, you know, the strange thing is we'd played that fair a couple times before over the years with no issues. And they had me make a statement on the reason I named the band Confederate Railroad.
We had talked about that earlier in the broadcast, but just in case somebody's tuned in or maybe they don't remember exactly what we said earlier, why don't you just go ahead and tell us very briefly that story again of how you came upon the name Confederate Railroad?
When I got the record deal, I was living in Kennesaw, Georgia. And the Train the General, the old Disney movie and all, is housed in Kennesaw, where it was taken by the Andrews Raiders and recaptured in Chattanooga. So my whole life I've heard stories about this train, and there used to be lawsuits about, well, we want it in Chattanooga. No, we're going to keep it in Kennesaw. And I just wanted something that said, kind of paid homage to where I was from and where I lived. And that's where the name came from.
I'd say a lot of people would probably think that the whole thing turned out better. I mean, it was kind of pathetic that the state of Illinois and the governor and the head of the Department of Agriculture and all of that, booted you all the way they did and, showed their disdain for our Southern heritage in spite of the fact that so many people, especially from Southern Illinois, actually crossed the line down into Kentucky to fight for the Confederacy. And because you did not do the state fair, as I understand it, there was this huge farm implement dealer who had a ton of acreage there within just a couple of miles of where the state fair was going to be. And he booked y'all to do what turned out to be an even bigger show. And the proceeds from that show went to fund honor flights, which, as I understand it, helped World War II veterans to be flown to Washington, D.C. to see the World War II memorial. And also just a way to honor those few remaining veterans of that Second World War. And so that was a great cause that you were able to help support. And so the whole thing just turned out a lot better. And not only that, but a lot of the feedback that we got, because in our Dixie Heritage newsletter, our weekly publication, we covered the story pretty extensively. And of course, we got a lot of feedback from people as well. And the feedback that I was getting was basically to the effect of that a lot of people, even people who aren't necessarily country music fans, people who aren't Southerners, people who you wouldn't think would have gave a damn one way or the other, they just saw this whole thing play out in the media and they're like, this is just stupid. And, they saw political correctness run amok and they just didn't like the looks of it.
Yeah, a lot of the people that did make comments weren't country music fans. Then on the other hand, we had friends like the Oak Ridge Boys and Charlie Daniels.
Yeah, Charlie Daniels issued a statement on Twitter right after your band got canceled. On July 5th, Charlie Daniels posted, "This political correctness thing is totally out of control. When a fair cancels the Confederate Railroad band because of their name, it's giving in to fascism, plain and simple, and our freedom disappears piece by piece. Sick of it."
Extra, read all about it.
If you're like me, and I'll bet you are because you're listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour, you like to be on the cutting edge of honest news and accurate information. You like to hear about the latest financial trends and to know what's happening around the world and right here in the United States, the things that can directly impact you, your life, and the life of your family. And if you're like me, you do not rely on the mainstream media to obtain this information because, frankly, you know that you just can't trust them. Fortunately, there is an alternative news outlet with a long-established track record for honesty and integrity, and that is the American Free Press. AFP is the preeminent alternative, independent news source for honest, hard-working, truth-loving Americans. AFP is the antithesis of the controlled, lamestream media. AFP is employee-owned and has been so since its founding. Because of that, AFP never has and never will allow advertisers or special interests or big money to dictate what appears in the pages of the American Free Press newspaper. 26 times a year, the American Free Press newspaper can be delivered to your door, packed with the kind of uncensored news that I know you're going to appreciate. AFP covers the stories and tells the truth that the lamestream media is frankly scared to touch. And AFP offers real, on-the-scene reporting and commentary, the likes of which you will never see in the Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, or just about any other lamestream news source that you can think of. That's right, there's only one national populist news weekly staffed by an unsurpassed team of veteran investigative journalists who will dare to rip the veil off of many of the major news stories that are being censored and suppressed by the big money-controlled media monopoly. And that's the American Free Press. AFP publishes exciting, in-depth, uncensored news and information that's grassroots and patriotic, information that Americans need to know in order to combat the growing police state. AFP stands firmly against the New World Order and against those who are working to establish a global plantation under the rule of a powerful few. In short, AFP is your voice. If you have any doubt why they want to silence AFP, you must be relying on the lamestream media for your news, and folks, that's a big mistake. If you're ever dissatisfied with your subscription to the American Free Press, their guarantee is that you just drop them an email and they will gladly refund the unused portion of your subscription. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.americanfreepress.net. Once again, www.americanfreepress.net. And find out about the American Free Press. Do it today.
Extra, read all about
Now,
it.
Charlie Daniels is a friend of Confederate heritage and, of course, just is an American who believes in freedom of speech and just believes in freedom. just realizes that the whole thing that happened there to Confederate Railroad was just wrong. But anyways, I've got a clip here that I'm just going to go ahead and stick into the show right here because I've been sitting on this for a while now and finally have an opportunity to do something with it without, sticking it into another show out of context. Of course, I'd love to get Charlie Daniels on the show and sit down with him and talk to him for a full hour, but, maybe one of these days we'll get to do that. But right now, all I've got is a little clip here. And so I'm going to play that. It's Charlie Daniels on the telephone talking about how disgusted he is at the removal of Confederate monuments.
No, I mean, that's just what ISIS is doing over in the places where they were, there were pieces of history over there they didn't like. They're taking them down. Where does it go to, Rita? I mean, where does it stop? Where is it? Is it just, is it just going to be Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, and are we headed into Jefferson and Washington, who were both slave owners? Are we how deep in history we're going to go? Is everybody that we disagree with, we're going to have to wipe every semblance of them out? I mean, is that what this is all about? Is this where it's going to end? Is this where it's going to go? I mean, come on.
So are you advocating for Confederate monuments as a Southerner, or just as somebody who thinks that we should be true to our history, or is both?
You don't have to condone what happened in the Civil War. We all know what it was fought for. You certainly don't have to condone it, but they are statues of people who are part of our history. There are people who are part of our history that were not very savory characters. But Robert E. Lee, for instance, was one of the most honorable people in our history. I know he fought for the Confederacy against the Union, but he was also asked to lead the Union troops.
Lee certainly was a great man and a great American, but you also mentioned some unsavory characters, some of whom apparently you've said have statues up as well, and there may be some truth to that. So are you saying that we should keep up the statues for honorable men like Jackson and Lee, men who we know were great, godly, honorable patriots, and maybe take down a few of the statues of the unsavory characters like maybe the one of Albert Pike up there in Washington, D.C. He was a little unsavory. That guy was into some stuff. Or are you just saying that we should keep all the monuments up?
Well, why not? I mean, what? If you don't like it, don't look at it.
If you don't like it, don't look at it. I love that. I'm going to use that sometime.
I walk past movie posters I don't like. I mean, I see, you walk by anything close to an X-rated movie, and they got posters out front that can, they're, but I'm not going to go over and tear them down. There's all kind of things that go on. There's all kind of symbolisms and things in this country that I don't like, but I'm not going to go tear them down. I just don't look at them. I just do. They're not standing there talking. These statues are not preaching. They're not saying anything. They're not shouting out some kind of crazy epithets or something. They're just sitting there. So just turn around and look at them.
Well, like I said earlier, I wish I could have had a little more time from Charlie Daniels, but we take what we can get. And, just some real good common sense wisdom there. If you don't like them, don't look at them. And, I think I had a old black lady here recently tell me something that was kind of similar to that. She's like, if people are offended, by whatever, then, they don't have to, they don't have to go see it. But it ought to be there for the people who do. And it's just like anything else. If you don't like a certain kind of music, don't listen to it. If you don't like certain kinds of movies, don't watch them. If you don't like a certain television network, don't tune into it. Personally, I have a real problem right now. I had to buy my son some shoes here recently. Had to get him some baseball cleats. And went into Dick's Sporting Goods there and, couldn't buy Nikes because of the whole Colin Kaepernick and, kneeling at the NFL thing. I said, I'm just not going to support Nike anymore until they get over that garbage. And then, of course, here recently, Under Armour had $200 million to give to gun control. It's like, so you know what? I'm not going to buy their stuff either. And so it didn't leave a lot of choices. I ended up having to buy a pair of Adidas sneakers. But, at least I wasn't out there, supporting gun control or, disrespecting the flag or any of that stuff. But, again, if you don't believe in something, you don't want to support something, then don't do it. But, that doesn't mean that other people who do believe in that or support that, shouldn't have the right to do their thing as well. And so some very wise words from Charlie Daniels. Anyways, back to our conversation. with Danny Shirley. Just tell us real quick, you got canceled there at the Illinois State Fair. I know you booked an alternate venue, but you still went up there. I guess maybe it took a lot of faith to go up there after all that happened.
One reason I wanted to go ahead and book this show, though, up there, and it's the week after the fair we were supposed to be at the fair, is I thought it might kind of help ease tensions up there a little bit. Well, we are going to come, just everybody kind of chill out a little bit. But
So then did you go up there and do the same concert that you were going to do at the state fair, the same playlist, the same whatever, or did it end up being a totally different show?
we never work off a set list. We tried that about 3 shows. We was all about to fall asleep back in the 90s. Haven't done a set list since then, but basically I tell the band what the first song is, and then we just kind of wing it after that. But we'll always do the hits. A lot of times I go back to Cohen Paycheck days and do a little, and we'll throw in some of the new songs. And a lot of people have their favorite album cuts.
Well, I know for me as a fan, as though it's been a long time since I've been to one of your concerts, but one of the things that I really enjoyed about it was that, it was obvious to me that you and all the members of the band were just up there having a lot of fun. And, that makes the show a whole lot better when you feel like the band is really, into the event and not just up there performing.
Oh, yeah, I think I agree totally. If I go to a show, I don't want to see some guy get up there and think, okay, you paid. I'm glad to be there, man. I appreciate every minute of this. We, every show we've ever done, we still stay and sign autographs.
Your nature, or was that something that as an entertainer, as a performer, you had to learn?
Willie Nelson told me the coolest thing. He said I met him in London when I was working with David, first time I met Willie. And, he was the biggest thing in country music and always on my mind. And said he hired this new security guy one time. And they were out walking around one morning and somebody stopped Willie and asked him for an autograph. And next thing you know, there's just a mob around him. This new security guy says, boss, said, do you want me to get rid of these people? Well, he said, Lord, no, son, it's been 30 years getting asked for it. Every autograph, every picture, we're just happy to do.
So you mentioned Willie Nelson, and you've mentioned Johnny Paycheck, and you've mentioned some other of the legends. I know one of the legends that I was a personal friend with and that I always thought was a great guy was George Jones. Kind of a funny story how I met George Jones. I was a pastor in a little town in Texas, and the barber used to always brag about how his son played guitar in George Jones's band. And darndest thing, one day I went in to get a haircut, and there were 2 big old buses parked out in front of the barbershop there. And I walked in, and there was George Jones and all the boys, and they were getting haircuts. So I realized at that point that my barber, his name was Buddy the barber, I realized he wasn't BSing when he said that his son was the guitar player in George Jones's band. So anyways, I got to know George Jones then, and he was just a great guy. But I understand that you knew George Jones a lot better than I did.
When we first, even after we had hits, the Nashville music community was a little leery of us. The past with Cohen, Paycheck, and we were pretty rough around the edges back then. And George stepped up and took us out on tour with him. And it was like after that, you could feel the difference from the Nashville music community. Well, if George likes them, they must be okay, And we toured together off and on right up till he passed away. He was such a good man to me.
And though I didn't know him personally, Waylon Jennings, another one of those greats, I understand that you also kind of had the same relationship with him later on that you enjoyed with George Jones.
Oh, yeah, I remember going to Waylon, and after we got to know each other, I didn't come to him right off. After we got to know each other, I told him, I said, you're what made me a country music fan. And, to have these young guys come to me and say they listened to me growing up and,
That's incredible.
Made them decide that's what they want to do. One real well-known songwriter came up to me and said, you're the reason I got into country music. And I'm like, great, write me a song.
So let's talk about political correctness as we're starting to run out of time here on this week's TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour. You are an outspoken individual, which is one of the reasons why I think myself and so many of your fans love you and love your music and love what you do. People expect you as a musician, as an entertainer, as a public figure, as somebody who's on TV and radio to be politically correct. And, thank you, God bless you, that you've just refused to do it. But just, vent if you want a little bit. Give us your take on political correctness.
It just gets back to, I do what I like, and not real politically correct anyway. And we did a lot of that, I guess, on the first album, and again on the Unleashed album. We just went in there and I like this, I'll record it. And
prompt you just a little bit. One of your songs, as I understand it, you kind of had a little bit of a beef with the Homeowners Association, and that led to a very politically incorrect song that you recorded.
Back when things first started going real good for us, I bought a real nice house in a nice neighborhood, and after we moved in, we found out that the neighbors had a meeting because they were concerned that I was moving in the neighborhood. And so I wrote a song that says, I might have been born just poor white trash, but I sold 1 million records and made a little cash. Now the doctors and the lawyers don't think it's funny that they're living next door to white trash with money. So I did that for my neighbors.
So let's get back to political correctness. You'd mentioned at the beginning of the show how Southerners are just natural-born rebels. Is that what it is? Or, what is it exactly that drives you to be a little different?
I'm very anti-political. I hate being somebody telling me what I can and can't think. Being raised, I was told, be your own person, go your own way, and it doesn't matter what the rest of the world thinks. You stand for what you believe in. And now with political correctness, to me, that's just somebody telling me that everything the values I was raised with is wrong. I have to think like everybody else.
So you decided then that if the N-word was going to be politically incorrect, you were going to insist that the R-word or redneck be politically incorrect. Tell us about that.
A friend of ours, Dennis Lindy, a great songwriter there in Nashville. His last big hit was Goodbye Earl. He wrote a song for us called the R-word. So we figure if we've got to be politically correct toward everybody else, they should be politically correct toward us rednecks. Okay. And they shouldn't use the R-word when they talk about our neck.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to play that R-word for our listeners.
I am a Southern boy and was brought up to treat everybody with respect. And though I do my best, sometimes it's mighty hard when folks use the R-word to talk about my neck. They use that R-word when they talk about my neck. All across this nation, efforts being made to be so politically correct. It applies to almost every creed and nationality, but they still use the R-word when they talk about my neck. They still use the R-word when they discuss my neck. Call me hillbilly, call me country fried, and I will not object. Call me farm boy and I'll take that with pride. Just don't use that R-word when you talk about my neck. Don't use that R-word in reference to my neck. That little word don't bother me at all when it is used, describing a sunset or a wine. But surely they could find some less offensive substitute when referring to the cervical region of my spine. That verbal combination just gets me every time. Call me hillbilly, call me country fried, and I will not object. Call me farm boy and I'll take that with pride. Just don't use that R-word when you talk about my neck. Don't use that R-word in reference to my neck. Call me a clodhopper, call me a stump jumper, call me a pain in the tail. Call me an antiquated backwater cracker, call me Ishmael. Call me a knuckle-dragging inbred honky, call me a slack-jawed hick. Call me an addle-brained, shallow-minded boondocker, I don't mind a bit. What's all I gotta say, that's all she wrote. Come on, gang, let's take her on home.
You know, you sounded a lot like Tennessee Ernie Ford on the vocals on that one. And anyways, we do have to break here for a commercial. And so we're going to have a brief word from one of our sponsors, the North Carolina Heritage Fund. And then we will be right back with our guest, Danny Shirley. The North Carolina Heritage Political Action Committee was organized by concerned citizens of North Carolina in 2015 in response to the increased attacks on North Carolina's history and heritage. The North Carolina Heritage PAC supports state and local candidates for public office who pledge and show their support for the protection of Confederate memorials and the preservation of all of North Carolina's history. We all know that Confederate memorials and symbols are the easy targets, and that the end game of our leftist enemies is to erase and rewrite all of history, from the colonies to the War on Terror. If we fight them for our state's rich Confederate history and heritage, we may be able to stop them from their mission of total destruction. Join the North Carolina Heritage PAC now by visiting ncheritagepac.org. Once again, that is www.ncheritagepac.org. And help us on the front lines of North Carolina politics. The mission statement of North Carolina Heritage PAC is that the North Carolina Heritage PAC was created with the purpose of supporting diverse efforts to defend and preserve the heritage, traditions, monuments, cemeteries, flags, emblems, and other legacies of North Carolina history against those efforts to remove, deface, legislate against, alter, and otherwise corrupt or pervert their meaning, history, presentation, and standing in our state. Once again, www.ncheritagepac.org. So tell us, how do people get a hold of you? You said you had that new email address. How do people flood you with emails? Put it that way. Or, you know, maybe they want to find out, okay, what's the tour schedule for Confederate Railroad? Are they coming to my town? Maybe they want to buy some music, and maybe they could buy it directly from you, and that way Walmart doesn't have to get a piece of the action there, or, you know, whoever. How do people just keep up with you, follow you, stay in touch with you? How do they do that?
Well, we've got, of course, the Confederate Railroad website, confederateраilroad.net. We've got our Facebook account, people can keep up with that. And, the album is available just about everywhere, iTunes. Go to our website is probably the best thing.
Well, that's the conversation with Danny Shirley, and so all the great things that are going on there with Confederate Railroad, and appreciate a band that is sticking by that name, Confederate, and just is not ashamed of their Southern heritage, and is just proud and continuing. And so if you're not already a fan of Confederate Railroad, man, get online, go to their website, and just, download their stuff, start listening to it, and you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. Well, there's one more Confederate Railroad song that I want to play for y'all, and it's one of my personal favorites, and I know you're going to love it. It's a song that's called Still One Outlaw, and it's one that Danny did with country music legend David Allan Coe.
You say you don't like my kind, don't drink moonshine, homegrown ain't your thing. Never been to a roadhouse, knocked down, drag out, raised a little country cane. You think it's a crime to live my life the way my daddy did, but if you come around to burn us down when the smoke clears your can bed, there'll be still one outlaw left. I got kinfolks from Kentucky, the sweet home I found. I get loud and rowdy, that's all you need to know about me right now. I'm just a reckless renegade, doing what I do best, and there's still one outlaw left.
I stared down a sawed-off, Mr. Call your dogs off, acting like Billy the Kid. I rode a hog in the hard rain, trying to catch a fast train. The dogs couldn't catch me, but the devil sure did. I got me a wild sow just about a mile wide, son of a shotgun in the shack. And them boys like me, they're a dying breed, but until my last breath, there'll be still one outlaw left.
sure I'm dead. 'Cause there's still one outlaw left. One outlaw left.
As I said before, that is our conversation with Danny Shirley. But stay tuned, because here in a minute we're going to have another great group for you. One of the ladies in the church that I've pastored in Florida for the last few years was the widow, or is the widow, of the late drummer from Leonard Skinner. And so anyways, she's just been a blessing to me through the last few years. And I've been trying to get her. I said, Susan, you got to get Skinner on my show. And I just haven't been able to set that up yet. But the band did retire here, I guess about a year or so ago. They had their farewell tour, and it was my privilege to cover that for the American Free Press. And so got to talk for just a couple of minutes to the boys. And so we're going to have that for you. They're going to tell us what they think about the Confederate battle flag and the assaults on our Southern heritage. But before that, we're going to have another just very brief commercial. One of our good friends, Cooter Ben Jones, is going to invite us out to his place, Cooter's Place, there in Virginia.
Breaker One might be crazy, but I ain't dumb. Crazy Cooter coming at you. Hey, y'all, got your ears on? Well, I got some news for you. We're here at our brand new Cooters in the Country store in Sperryville, Virginia. Good old Sperryville, where Cooters started many years ago. Folks are coming from all over Hazard County, and we're going to have a grand old time with good music, good food, and best of all, good friends. Hope y'all can be there. Whoop, whoop, here come Enos. Huck got Cletus with him. I'm down and I'm gone.
So we're back, and as promised, here's a recording from a little over a year ago when Leonard Skinner had their farewell tour, just the boys sitting around backstage talking about political correctness and their proud display of their Southern heritage.
On the internet, I don't really go on there and look, but we still, Johnny has the flag around, the Dixie flag around his microphone for Alabama, and we have a whole flag over the piano.
I know some people had kind of been disheartened that the big flag in the background was taken down, and then you brought it back for the farewell tour.
We just used to fly the big flag in the 70s because we were banned from the South, and that's what we were promoting. But we're still so proud to be Southern, and to fly the Dixie flag, that's fine. Show it here and there, and I don't know.
So that was Gary's take. Johnny, what's your take on the whole Confederate flag thing?
You know what? The flag's been associated with so many hate groups. And,
yeah, that's what we...
You know, and we can understand that. You know, we can understand it. And we, again, like Gary said, we're not here to hurt anybody's feelings. We're all fans of the blues, which was created by black artists. And... You know, and we would go against what the heck we feel and love, and that's what Leonard Skinner's been about. You listen to the songs. I mean, it's the blues, it's rock and roll, it's country. You know, it has influences from British rock, you know. So, you know what, but we love where we're from, and proud to be from the South. We like grits, we say y'all, you know.
Well, everybody's gotten so politically correct in the last few years, or 10 or 15, really, a lot. And it's a subject every day that's brought up. So
I mean, we even have an Indian in the band.
Yeah. Rednecks, Indians, guns.
Read 'em and weed.
Well, that is all the time that we are going to have for this week's TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour. I hope y'all enjoyed the show today. I believe it really was a great one. I mean, you know, we had a Confederate Railroad, Leonard Skinner, and the great Charlie Daniels. So, you know, hey, we just can't. We may never top this one. This may be the best show that we ever do in the history of the Dixie Heritage Hour. So I hope that it was a blessing to you. You know, speaking of Charlie Daniels, I got an email the other day from a friend of mine, and it was a meme. And it said this. It said, I just don't understand what the big deal is about Satan worship. I mean, why would I want to worship a guy who lost a fiddle playing contest to a hillbilly in Georgia? And so, of course, we all know Charlie Daniels, The Devil Went Down to Georgia. He was looking for a Soul to Steal song. But I hope that one day we'll be able to have Charlie Daniels sit down for a full hour-long interview. And I'll look forward to being able to talk to him when that day comes. Also, Susan there at church, I'm going to work on her one more time. If nothing else, maybe we can get Johnny Van Zant on the show. I know I'd love to talk to him about all those years there with Leonard Skinner. But as I said, we're just about out of time. And so what I am going to do is I'm going to encourage you to go to our website, www.dixieheritage.net. www.dixieheritage.net. We've got a lot of new things up on the website. For example, we're archiving these radio shows directly on the website, so you can go through the archives and listen to past episodes. We're nowhere near being full on that. We're about halfway through it right now. But every week we'll get a few more episodes up, so be sure to tune into that. And also, when you're on our website, you can read the past issues of our weekly Dixie Heritage newsletter. We kind of broke from tradition this week because so far all of our guests have been Dixie Heritage newsletter subscribers. David Shirley is not a Dixie Heritage newsletter subscriber. And I do not know that the members of Skinnerd are Dixie Heritage subscribers. I believe that Charlie Daniels is, at least he was at one time, and I assume that he still is. But I know you'll want to be one of our Dixie Heritage newsletter subscribers. And so I want to encourage you, when you get to the www.dixieheritage.net website, sign up for my free newsletter. There's absolutely no cost, no obligation. Just give us your email address, and we send you a free newsletter every week, and it's just chock full of great information that I know you'll want to read week after week of what's going on throughout the Southland and the attacks and the assaults against our Southern and Confederate heritage. When you sign up for the free newsletter, I will also give you another free gift, again, no cost, no obligation, and that will be a copy of my book, The Truth About the Confederate Battle Flag. I'd also like to encourage you to go to the website of our primary sponsor, the Barnes Review magazine, www.barnesreview.org, and you can see the back episodes of TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour. If you click the radio tab there at the Barnes Review magazine, you can also click the blog or the news. I can't remember what the link is now. It's either blog or news. And you can see some articles there that I've written over the last couple of years that have been submitted to the magazine. And then, of course, you'll be able to find out how to get a hold of back issues of the magazine. And let me just say the current issue, the September-October 2019 issue, the 25th anniversary issue of TBR magazine, is definitely something that you want to get your hands on. I think it's like $5 to buy the PDF, and I think $10 to have the actual paper issue mailed to your house. It's worth it. This thing is the biggest issue of the Barnes Review magazine that has ever been published. And there's a couple of great articles in there by yours truly, and also some great stuff in there by Pat Shannon and by Matt Johnson, both of whom have been regular guests here on TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour. Go to the website. If you haven't already got your copy of the Barnes Review magazine, get it. And while you're there, subscribe to the Barnes Review. You'll be glad that you did. Anyways, from all of us here at TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour, we are out of time, but we will see you next week. Until then, God bless.